This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, 250-plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM, Channel 80. Number to call up, as always, is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. We are coming at you live from Houston, Texas, for the NBA Western Conference Finals, brought to you by Indeed, used by over 3 million businesses for hiring. Post a job today at Indeed.com/hire. It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Oh! Did you see it? Did you see it, ladies and gentlemen? Did you see what transpired last night in the Western Conference Finals inside the Toyota Center in H-Town? I mean, we got a series. And I got to admit to you, I sat on these airwaves yesterday. I was a little bit worried. I got a little bit nervous because I said, you know something? The Golden State Warriors are playing with house money. They rolled into the Toyota Center in Houston. They stole game one, handling their business with Kevin Durant leading the way with 37, with Klay Thompson chipping in 28, including 6 3-pointers, with the rest of the crew doing what they did while the Houston Rockets played iso ball. James Harden holding the ball for more than 10 seconds on 28 different occasions. Mike D'Antoni is stubborn as hell, talking about we ain't going to change anything. This is who we are. This is what we're going to do. We're going to be true to our identity, and we don't give a damn if it is against the Golden State Warriors, the reigning, defending NBA champions with 3 of the greatest shooters this game has ever seen. And so they showed up last night in Game 2 at the Toyota Center in H-Town. For those of you who are ignorant, that would be Houston, Texas. And what happened? Not only did the Houston Rockets beat the Golden State Warriors 127-105 to be exact. They beat them up. And I'm telling you something right now. We've got ourselves a series. This could end up being special. It really, really could. Because I got to admit to you, even though I picked Houston to win last night and I thought they would, I didn't think they'd win like this. I didn't think Draymond Green would get held to 6 points. I didn't think Klay Thompson would get held to 8 points. I didn't think Steph Curry not only would look relatively pedestrian, but literally get abused by the Houston Rockets. I didn't see that coming. And let me reiterate what I just said to y'all so y'all understand the magnitude of my words. Steph Curry got abused. Wherever he was, they found him. Wherever he was on the defensive side of the ball, they found him. They ran him through picks and screens. Chris Paul was just a bully, just a little pit bull. Every time I turned around, Steph Curry was lifting himself off the hardwood floor. Lifting himself off the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't make this stuff up. And I can't wait till we're going to have my man Jeff Van Gundy, NBA analyst extraordinaire, former head coach for the Houston Rockets, by the way. Former head coach for the New York Knicks, by the way. Analyst extraordinaire. He'll be on the show with us in just a few minutes, followed by a GM that appropriately can be called great. His name is Daryl Morey of the Houston Rockets. He's coming on the show in a little bit as well. Obviously, he knows what the hell he's doing. He's one of the elite executives in the game today. A matter of fact, if we didn't talk so much about Danny Ainge in Boston, we'd probably be talking about Daryl Morey more. So I'll be talking to both of them in just a little while. Make no mistake about it, right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. But I got to tell you something right now. It was shocking to see how many times Steph Curry had to get lifted off the canvas or lifted himself off the canvas. It was very, very, very shocking. And having said all of that, we've got ourselves a series because understand what's transpiring. Understand the ingredients of what's transpiring. Understand what's going on right now as we speak. What we're looking at is a situation where clearly the Houston Rockets have found a weakness. Steph Curry, in fairness to him, has categorically and emphatically denied that there is any truth to the notion that he's not 100%. He told me last night, personally, no excuses. I stepped on the court. I felt ready to play. I'm absolutely fine. They just took advantage of things. That's all. And he was very, very clear about that. But I heard that he tweaked his knee a little bit. Now, obviously, when you got a grade 2 MCL sprain, which is what he had, offensively, you could go out there and do some things because you're dictating movement with your knee and your leg. But on the defensive side of the ball, where somebody else is dictating and you're reacting, you don't control your movements quite as much. As a result, extra pressure, extra stress, according to people I've spoken to, is applied to that knee. Ligaments get strained, and ultimately you tweak your knee that way because it becomes a bit agitated. That is what they described happened to Steph Curry last night, even though Steph Curry categorically denies it. Why does Houston deserve credit for something like that? It's very, very simple. They saw Steph Curry at less than 100%, and they attacked him all night long. Chris Paul was a little pit bull, man. There is something special about this young brother. I shouldn't say young anymore. He's 32 going on 33 years of age. But my God, you talk about somebody on a mission to win a championship, that would be Chris Paul. And last thing, stats don't tell his whole story. And we all know that. Because in the end, what did Chris Paul do statistically? It's not anything to write home about. Chris Paul had 16 points on 6 of 14 shooting. That's what he did. Had 16 points. Okay, and 6 assists. But guess what? Trevor Ariza had 19. P.J. Tucker, who came into the series shooting better than 44% from three-point range, hit 8 or 9 shots, 5 or 6 from three-point range. Eric Gordon went berserk, scored 27 on 6 or 9 from three-point range. When you get that level of production, particularly from the perimeter, from the Houston Rockets, I got news for you. You can win the championship. And so as a result, we sit here today. I ain't jumping off the Golden State bandwagon. I'm not going to tell you that I've changed my mind, that I believe that the Golden State Warriors are going to lose this series. But I will tell you this. My original prediction about this series potentially going 7 games, that's been revitalized. I will tell you this. Whoever wins this series is going to win the championship. I will tell you this. This is a damn series. Now, Houston could go into Oakland and wet the bed at the Oracle in Golden State over the next 2 games. But based on what I saw last night and their recipe for success and the way in which they plan on attacking Steph Curry, unless Steph Curry gets his legs right and unless he gets healthy, I don't know how this is not going to be a series. I really, really don't. If you don't believe me, listen to James Harden talk last night after the game about what kind of chess match this is. Take it away, guys.
So we focus on what we're supposed to do. We're really worried about who we're playing against. Like if we come out and be some dogs and do what we did tonight, it doesn't matter. But if we don't, then we see the results in game 1. You know, so it's not about chess match or what they're doing. It's about us.
Amen to that. Amen to that. But if you don't believe him, listen to Coach Mike D'Antoni following Houston's game 2 victory last night. Listen to him.
We are who we are, and we had to be who we are. We just did it better, longer. Guys believe it, and we're not going to change anything up. That would be silly on my part to panic. I mean, you don't do that. We're very comfortable about who we are, and we can beat anybody, anywhere, at any time, playing the way we play. Now, some people might not like it. You know, hey, sorry.
Wow. You know what? Mike D'Antoni, they can talk about no tweaks, whatever the case may be. You can sit up there and you may not have changed anything schematically. But I saw a different Rockets team in game 2 than I saw in game 1. That's why I can't wait for Jeff Van Gundy to get on these airwaves. I saw a different Rockets in game 2 than I saw in game 1. And the irony in it is like clearly James Harden is their best player in terms of scoring. But I'm telling you right now, it was a different team. With him not hogging the ball and them sharing the basketball collectively, that was a different Rockets team. But if you don't believe me, who better to listen to than my colleague here at ESPN and ABC, former head coach for the Houston Rockets and New York Knicks, an outstanding head coach, by the way, now doing a great and outstanding job for us right here calling these games. The one and only Jeff Van Gundy is on the line with us right now. What's up, Coach? How you doing, sir? How's everything?
I'm doing well, Stephen. How are you?
Coach, I know you're covering Cleveland, Boston, but watching I know you've seen some of these games, these first two games with Golden State and Houston. Can you tell me what difference you saw between the Rockets in Game 1 and the Rockets in Game 2 last night?
Well, I think the idea of adjustment, Stephen, is misunderstood by most because it's almost become a cliche. And I think the biggest adjustment teams make between one game and the next is maybe who you play or how many you play. You saw last night they played Mabute very, very little. But the biggest adjustment is in effort, intensity, physicality, and shot making. And in all of those areas last night, Houston was far better than they were in Game 1. I thought they played an outstanding game.
We're talking to Jeff Van Gundy, former head coach with the Houston Rockets, right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. I thought they played an outstanding game as well. I was kind of surprised, as effective as we know this supporting cast to be. I still was surprised at how effective P.J. Tucker was, Eric Gordon was, and to a lesser degree, Trevor Ariza. What about you?
Well, Eric Gordon's a good player, a really good player. And so he has not shot the ball well. Last night, he shot the three very well. He's very powerful when he drives it to the rim. So when his jumpers go, and then he can use his strength to get by people. And they really went at them off the dribble last night. I know a lot of people have questioned how the Rockets play. It's not really, to me, isolation or not isolation. It's how long does it take you to get into your move? And I thought last night they were catching and attacking at a quicker rate, and I think that allows more time on the shot clock. 4 of those extra passes you were talking about, Stephen. And then, P.J. Tucker is an excellent corner three-point shooter, not as good above the break. And so he got to his spots, they found him, and he came through.
Coach, it's interesting that you bring that up because to me, all of that transpired or it was initiated once James Harden went to the bench. They actually looked like a better team without James Harden. Now, obviously, I don't mean that in its literal sense because James Harden, to me, is the league MVP this year. But I'm just saying for certain moments during last night's game, they seemed to trust one another and played with activity as opposed to playing a role of spectators when James Harden was on the floor. Are you confident that that's something that could continue as this series progresses?
Well, I think it's one of the great reasons that they got Chris Paul was when Harden did go to the bench, that they had another great decision maker, playmaker. And Paul, I thought, was so very good last night. And so I'm not saying it's because Harden was out, but I think it does show you why Daryl Morey made the move to get Chris Paul. He played outstanding basketball. And I think, again, the thing with Harden is everybody knows he's ultra-talented offensively. Sometimes those guys want to play with the ball a little too much. I think Harden in Game 1 probably over-dribbled on a few occasions. Last night, I thought he was much more economical with his dribbles and attacked, as did Paul.
We're talking to the great coach Jeff Van Gundy right here with Stephen A. on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Coach, I know that we never hesitate to give players credit. But obviously, for obvious reasons, you're somebody that's big on giving coaches credit as well because we certainly don't hesitate to give them the blame when they deserve it. We should give them credit too. No question about that. How do you feel about the job that D'Antoni has done with this team and what's made him so successful now compared, let's say, to what he may have been like in L.A. and to obviously lesser degree New York? I know talent is an obvious answer, but is there anything else we're missing?
Well, the thing I think Mike's obviously done a fantastic job, but I think what I've always admired about Mike is he's played to his team's greatest strengths from an individual standpoint. So in Phoenix, they were the 7 seconds or less Phoenix. He put the ball in Nash's hands, and they played at a very high pace. And they ran some very intricate offensive maneuvers. They were just really enjoyable to watch. Houston, they don't move as well or as often. They play completely differently, and yet they're still extraordinarily successful offensively. And because maybe he diagnosed that their team couldn't play the same way, they play different but very successfully. So I always admire when guys can adapt and adjust to their talent. Mike's done that extraordinarily well.
When we talk about Mike D'Antoni, usually we talk about his offensive brilliance as a coach. Not enough has been said about his defensive philosophy, and for obvious reasons in the past. But when you look at this Houston Rockets team, how do you view them defensively? How much better have they gotten, and how much credit do you give to D'Antoni for that?
Well, I think how good you are defensively, just like it is offensively, Stephen, starts with roster construction. And I thought Daryl Morey made some very good moves in the offseason to give themselves a better chance to defend the elite defenses in the league. So they went out and got Chris Paul, Ma Abute, and Tucker. So right there, it takes some lesser defenders off the floor, put some more quality defensive players on the floor. And then they went to, like Golden State does right now, more switching than we've ever seen in this league. Basically, Houston switches every pick and roll, every dribble handoff, which some teams are going to, but even off the ball screen, Stephen, they switch everything. Doesn't matter if it's Clint Capella, PJ Tucker, they're confident in their ability to switch and then still hold their own on the defensive glass. So they've committed to that style more than any team in the league. And I give Mike and Jeff Bazdelik, his associate head coach in charge of the defense, a lot of credit for, again, playing to their team's strengths. And they're a good defensive team now, very good.
Jeff Van Gundy right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. So with that all being said, we've raved constantly about the greatness of the Golden State Warriors, the prolific scorers / shooters that they have at their disposal. When we talked about the Houston Rockets and what we saw last night, what did you see from the Golden State Warriors last night that alarmed you the most?
They just don't have a lot of quality perimeter players. To me, they have so many centers on their team, and none of them in this series are playable because of the style of play that Houston employs and the roster that Houston puts out on the floor. So they can't play those guys. So with Patrick McCaw being out with that injury, they are really a perimeter player or two short in this series. And both Thompson and Curry struggled a little bit last night. Durant was great, but they just don't have a lot of weaponry after those three that can go out and get you 14, 15 points. Iguodala's not that player anymore. Livingston can do it on occasion. Nick Young gave them those 9 points on 3 threes in game one. They're going to have to try to find some offense. I think they're going to bounce back good, but, one of the problems with having such a top-heavy roster is at times when those guys struggle, and two of them did last night, your team can look real thin.
Jeff Van Gundy right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. So with that being said, Coach, is that your way of saying that if for those of you out there who think that the Houston Rockets are favorites, it makes sense to think like that?
I couldn't go that far, Stephen. Not favored, no.
Right.
Golden State now has home court advantage. I would expect Curry to play better, but I am growing weary of every time he plays poorly, we say it's because of health. I mean, that happened 2 years ago in the playoffs. He played a great game, no one mentions his health. He plays a poor game, everyone blames his health, as to sort of try to diminish what Houston's done. Houston's a great team, and they have a legit chance to win this game. They can win in Golden State, but they're going to have to play very well. Durant has been so great for 2 straight games. They're going to have to hope that he cools off in a game. I would still give the Warriors a slight advantage due to home court, but I picked Houston going into the series, and after 2 games, 2 diametrically opposed games, I have no idea who's going to win, but it's a heck of a series.
Wow, Jeff Van Gundy right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Coach, before I let you get on out of here, you're calling the Cleveland-Boston Celtics series. I got to admit to you, obviously LeBron James is going home. The Boston Celtics are a completely different team on the road than they are at home. But, I mean, talk about a must game. Cleveland doesn't win this series, it's over. It doesn't win this game, game 3. The series is over as far as I'm concerned. What has been going on in this series? Why are the Boston Celtics up 2-0 on LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Well, I think Boston's more talented, they're tougher, and they're more together. I mean, I just think right now it's a landslide for Boston. I think all year long people have underestimated the talent level that Boston has. They won 55 games without Gordon Hayward. They won 55 games with Kyrie Irving being out for 20-some games. I mean, this is a team loaded with lottery picks. Danny Ainge has constructed a great roster. Brad Stevens has maximized that roster exceptionally well. But this idea that they're not more talented than Cleveland, I was surprised when people were evaluating how they were evaluating. Other than James, I think Boston has a matchup advantage right down the line, and Cleveland's going to have to find somebody, Stephen, besides James. Love played a good offensive game in Game 2. They've got to find some other guys who they believe in and who have the toughness to compete in these hard-fought games, because right now I just don't see a lot of spine on Cleveland's team, one that's going to stick.
Do you think they will find somebody else? I'm sincerely doubting it right now, to be honest with you, based on what I've seen. What are your thoughts?
No, I think, listen, when you're together as long as they are, this has been a long 4-year run. And this year they've had major roster turnover. It hasn't worked the way they had hoped to. They just look like, and I don't diminish. I think they've overachieved by getting to the – I was surprised, actually, that they got to where they got to. I thought they would lose to either Indiana or Toronto. That they got through both series speaks to James's greatness, Ty Lue keeping that team together, and them finding just enough. I just don't see how they can come back in this series. Could they win a game? Sure. Could they win a couple at home? Absolutely. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they lost Game 3.
Jeff Van Gundy, appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much. Looking forward to hear you call and get
All right.
3 and the rest
Take
of the
care,
series with Cleveland
Stephen.
and Boston. Thanks a lot, buddy. Appreciate it. The one and only Jeff Van Gundy, NBA analyst extraordinaire, former head coach for the Houston Rockets and the New York Knicks, right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Up next, the general manager for the Houston Rockets, the one and only Daryl Morey. He's up next with yours truly, right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Next, you're holding up the line, ma'am.
What did you say?
You're next in line for the water slide, ma'am. Feet forward and enjoy the ride.
Okay, dearie, this does look fun. Whee-oh, you melted me. I've melted.
The Wicked Witch of the West on a water slide? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
See what you've done. Oh!
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
31 minutes past hour. Number 1 back here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. It is my honor and privilege to have my next guest on the line, a guest on this radio show for the very first time. He is the general manager for the Houston Rockets, a team that has won at least 54 games a season in 4 of the last 5 years. The one and only Daryl Morey is on the line with yours truly right now. What's up, buddy? How you doing? How's everything?
Good morning. That was quite an intro. Thanks.
Yeah, you deserve it. You deserve it. I got to give credit where credit is due, Daryl. I got to ask you, how are you feeling right now compared to how you were feeling 24 hours ago?
Yeah, well, everyone has recency bias, so I'm feeling good right now, and we were not feeling very good after Game 1. So no surprise. We as rational as we try to be. We're all playing a game, and it's a game we've all played. And if you win, you feel much better.
Daryl Morey, talk to me about, this team, what we saw last night compared to what we saw in game one. As the man responsible for assembling this team, it's one thing for us to look at Coach Mike D'Antoni and say, okay, he's the coach. There's certain things that are supposed to be done. There's certain things that he's going to do, et cetera, et cetera. But as a guy looking at it from the vantage point of yourself, who assembled this team, who picked this coach, talk to me about what you expected to see in game one, what you didn't see then, and compared to what you saw last night.
Yeah, I would say the big things were in game one, lots of transition defensive mistakes. That was probably the number one thing the coach has focused on. And it was a little disappointing, but, we hadn't really played a team this good since we played the Warriors in January. So, unfortunately, our guys, just lost them a bunch of times. And we know how good the Warriors are. They're extremely good. The other one was, game one, we weren't getting into our offense early enough. We weren't getting into our primary actions until sometimes 8 on the clock, things like that. And that's, again, another thing the coaches emphasized. So it was a little disappointing that we didn't do it in game one. And as you might expect, those are a lot of the key things we did different in game two, both those two things. And then I'd say, Mike went more with a smaller lineup, and that worked. And we also went longer minutes with guys like Eric Gordon, who obviously had a great game.
We're talking to Daryl Morey, the general manager for the Houston Rockets in the Western Conference Finals for the second time in the last 3 years or so. He's right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Daryl, I want you to just crystallize this for me or just break something down. Watching the NBA game, seeing how the game has evolved over the years, you're one of the elite architects, in the NBA today. As a matter of fact, I think people would be talking about you a hell of a lot more if we weren't too busy salivating over the greatness of Danny Ainge and the job that he has done with the Boston Celtics. But when you look at teams, whether they're the New York Knicks, whether they're the Los Angeles Lakers, now the Clippers, and you see the way they're reformulating things in Chicago and beyond. Talk to me about the game of basketball and how it's evolved in your mind in today's game compared to what it used to be when you arrived in 2007. How much has the game changed, and in what ways do you think specifically it should be illustrated and accentuated?
Well, yeah, first, like I said, I did work for Danny Ainge, and he definitely was the executive of the year. What he's been able to do over the years, and obviously you're seeing it play out in the playoffs. In terms of how the game's evolved, it's evolved rapidly. So that's what's been interesting to me over the last couple of years. We saw these changes happening, and a lot of our acquisitions you see on our roster were pointed towards that. But the rapidity at which the game has turned into, you have to have 5 threats on the floor. Generally, you need at least 4, if not 5 shooters among your 5 on offense. Then on defense, really no way to guard those offenses that have so many threats at the same time, unless you have people who can guard multiple positions. Those change, and then obviously people talk about the 3-ball, but that change has been happening for a long time, and over the last 4 years also reached a boil, and it was increasing for the last 20 years, but the last 4 years it's spiked dramatically. So those are probably the big changes. And then I would want to mention one more thing, and that's people are recognizing what Mike D'Antoni did years ago, which is that if you're going to beat these better defenses that can guard multiple positions, you do need to be able to attack teams earlier in the clock.
It's interesting that you say that because I agree with that, but I will say this about you. When I look at Mike D'Antoni, I see a guy that's slightly different. You hired him on June 1st of 2016, and obviously he did a relatively decent job in with the Lakers, to a lesser degree with the New York Knicks. He was absolutely fantastic with the Phoenix Suns. I think if things had gone their way, he could have won a championship in Phoenix during the heyday of the Spurs, for crying out loud. But I will say this. There was a time that he was seen as an individual that couldn't give 2 cents about defense. That seems to have changed. Can you speak to that at all, whether or not that's true? And if so, how did the change take place?
Well, I think Mike would point out that he never really had bad defensive teams. Like even his Phoenix teams, everyone pointed out, people weren't used to adjusting for pace back then, and those Phoenix teams were average on defense. But I would say, I mean, it was a big part of the interview process with Coach D'Antoni. We were extremely fortunate that he was available in that he's hit, I think, the perfect time in his career. And he basically was like, look, I think the way things are going, that having a defensive coach is the right way to go. And so he was extremely open to that, and we added Coach Jeff Van Gundy, who is one of the best minds in the league, worked with Miami, and then obviously architected those Memphis defenses that gave the Golden State Warriors fits in the past as well. So that was a big part of it. And I just think, just like our team, I think you've noticed this, Steven, one thing that's really helped is that every guy on our team, they're all veterans. Clint's our only young player. They literally have accomplished everything they can accomplish except to win a championship. And I think that's true of Coach D'Antoni as well. We caught him at the perfect time in his career, and obviously we're able to get him the players. The Knicks and the Lakers spot, both of those, frankly, didn't have players that really fit how when he has those players, that he's going to coach well.
Daryl Morey, General Manager for the Rockets, right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Just a few more questions before I let you go, Daryl. It's interesting that you bring that up because you're not just speaking about analytics. For those that don't know, you've got an analytics background. You've got a degree in computer science, with an emphasis on statistics from Northwestern University back from 1996. You got an MBA from MIT Sloan School of Management. You're a co-founder of the annual MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. I am not, contrary to popular belief, Daryl, I am not somebody who just dismisses or poo-poos analytics. What I get annoyed about is how folks act like it never existed in the game, or that's all that needs to exist now. And when I see the team that you assembled, obviously with your background, I know you've paid attention to that, but you seem to have a pulse on what's inside a player's chest as well. Chris Paul is a pit bull. Eric Gordon's not scared of anybody. PJ Tucker is a rough rider. When you look at these guys, how much do their personalities and the heart that they have when they go out there and compete, how much did that factor into you selecting them to come and play on this Houston Rockets team and pairing them all together with D'Antoni?
You made some great points there. I would say PJ Tucker's that guy, and that, one thing I've learned over the years is you've got to have guys who are living moment to moment, possession to possession, will do absolutely anything to get a loose ball. And Pat Beverly was that guy for us last year. And when we had to lose him in the Chris Paul trade, it was a massive priority to go get a guy like that. And PJ Tucker, I can't say enough about him. Obviously, we're catching him after one of his better offensive games. So most of the time, he's scoring 3-4 points. But he's the heart and soul of the toughness of this team. Obviously, James and Chris are the leaders and the ones who make everything happen. But PJ Tucker's been the unsung hero. And since we're talking about resumes, do people know your fantastic acting career as Brick on General Hospital? Is that ever talked about?
Well, it's talked about on occasion, but you informed me last night that your wife is a fan of mine, and it has nothing to do with my professional career as a journalist or a commentator. She loves me as Brick on General Hospital. I didn't know that, Daryl Morey.
She was mad I couldn't get you guys together. She was like, I got to get with Brick, so I'm hoping you're at one of our games down the road, so we can get you guys together. So.
I'm at the rest of the series. You'll see. Trust me, I will see Mrs. Morey. You can bet the house on that. Before I let you get on out of here, I'd be negligent if I didn't bring up. I'd be remiss if I neglected to bring up your quote about the Warriors. You know what that quote is. I think I'm not supposed to say that, but we're basically obsessed with how do we beat the Warriors. Have you ever had any regrets about saying that, or do you think you're sitting here today because you did put that on the record and your team obviously knows what the goal is?
I was surprised that got so much play. I mean, frankly, I don't know what else my job is. Clearly the Warriors are the class of the league, so it feels like 2019 should be obsessed with them. I was very surprised by that getting a lot of play because I think every team needs to figure out how to beat the Warriors for, frankly, the next couple of years. I mean, they're a young team with 4 All-Star, Hall of Fame level player. I mean, what else are we doing? Like, what else is our job? So I was a little surprised by it, but it felt like it's definitely the right thing to say. We should all be obsessed with how to beat those guys.
How are you feeling about where your team is at right now after last night's victory? It's one thing to beat the Warriors. It's another thing to beat them in the fashion that you beat them last night.
Well, I don't think they've lost at home for like 2 years. So it's obviously a long series. And, we did in the playoffs. I mean, we did beat them at home this year in a close game that Durant hit the game winner that happened to be .001 after the clock expired. So, it just shows how we're going to have to play our A-plus game. I think our guys are ready, but it's a huge challenge, obviously. But one thing we have in the locker room is belief, and I think that's where a lot of we've gotten in trouble in the media, and that the players, they feel like they can beat the Warriors. They've obviously proven it 3 times this year. We beat them. They know it's a challenge. They respect them like no other, but at the end of the day, you got to have belief in the locker room, and they do.
Last question to you, Daryl Morey. I asked a question. I won't reveal his name because I don't have his permission to reveal his name. But I will tell you that there is somebody within the Houston Rockets organization that said something that most folks would find shocking. They said, you know what? We love our team. This team is great. And this notion that all of a sudden the off season is going to arrive and we're going to salivate at the notion of getting LeBron James to join us and pursuing him, that may not necessarily be true. We may be perfectly fine without him. It's one thing for somebody else to say that. It's another thing for Daryl Morey, the general manager, for the Houston Rockets to have that kind of attitude. I'm not asking you to comment about a player per se, even that of LeBron James. But what I am asking you about is this. How good do you feel about this team, not just now, but moving forward, regardless of what happens in this series against the Golden State Warriors?
I mean, we feel great. I think, that sentiment, I think, just maps into what I just said before, and that we have a confident group. But, really, we're all just focused on winning Game 3, and the offseason will come, and everyone will get together. And one thing we do is we have partnerships with our top players, and we're all working together to create a team that can win the championship. I think the teams that are run best in this league now, they work in partnership with their players, and the ones that don't are falling by the wayside. And when the off season comes, and hopefully it's with a ring on our finger, then we'll figure out what the next step is. But right now, we're just focused on Game 3. I appreciate it.
Daryl Morey, appreciate you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, and I'll see you in Oakland. I'll be there for Game 3, all right, buddy?
Oh, great. Hey, thanks so much, Steven.
Thank you, buddy. The one and only Daryl Morey, the general manager extraordinaire for the Houston Rockets. The man has won 54 more games or more for the last 5 years. There's really nothing to say about him. Acquired Chris Paul. Acquired James Harden. Drafted Clint Capella. Replaced Kevin McHale, who was a damn good coach in my mind, and took him to the conference finals with Mike D'Antoni. I mean, the man has done an outstanding job, and if it wasn't for his former boss, Danny Ainge, we'd be talking about Daryl Morey. And we will do that and more in a minute. You're listening live to Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to hour number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show right here on ESPN Radio, coming at you 250-plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM, Channel 80. Number to call up, as always, is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Lots of stuff to get into in hour number 2. Thank both of them for coming on the show, blessing me with their presence. Daryl Morey's been doing an outstanding job. Simply can't be ignored. Simply can't be ignored. Man, let's go of Kevin McHale, and 11 games in. You know, he talked about a partnership with his players. These are the kind of things you can't ignore when an executive of his caliber is breaking that down to you. You don't just sit up there and do what Mark Murphy or Ted Thompson allegedly did to Aaron Rodgers with the NFL's Green Bay Packers. Shut up. Get out the office. You play, we run the organization. That's how this works. That's not how you win. That's not how you win. You win because you engage in partnerships with marquees who contribute to you winning. That's how you do it. That's the key to being an executive. Of course, you have to make the final call. And I'm going to get a little personal here. Everybody knows not just me from doing this radio show. They know me from doing First Take on ESPN, amongst other things. Ladies and gentlemen, it's nice to be a marquee name. It's nice to be a headliner. But you know what's best? When I got a boss like Dave Roberts, when I got an executive above him like Norby Williamson, when I got an editor like Chuck Solituro, who was placed on First Take by Norby Williamson, making sure that I's are dotted and T's are crossed. You got people that's watching your back. That's special. Because at the end of the day, no matter whether or not no matter over the fact that you're the marquee, you can't do anything by yourself. Success isn't accomplished all by your lonesome. That's not how success in the world of business works. And make no mistake about it, the same is applicable to sports. It all comes with the territory. And as a marquee talent, what you want is your voice to be heard. What you want are your thoughts to be considered. But what they want in return is the respect of knowing they're the ones held accountable for the actual decisions that are made. So respect their right to make it. And as a marquee talent, whether it's in the world of sports or beyond, you know what you ultimately want? And what you ultimately care about? That person is totally committed to winning. And the decisions that are being made ain't about personal affections and affinities for people at the expense of success. It's that no matter what decision is made, it has to be about the success of the product being the priority. That is what any talent wants. And when Daryl Morey talks about a successful partnership, a partnership with the players, you know what he's talking about, right? He didn't say it, didn't have to. He's talking about James Harden. You can't bring CP3 to Houston without James Harden, without his okay. You can't get rid of Dwight Howard without James Harden's okay. Or Kevin McHale for that matter. I am not in any way implying that James Harden walked into an office and got rid of dudes. Daryl Morey is an astute executive who sees the forest from the trees. And make no mistake about it, he had a conversation with James Harden before he made those decisions. And no one can deny this is James Harden's team in Houston. He's the leader of the pack. He's the straw that stirs everything. Whether you like it or not. And I love it. So props to the Houston Rockets, props to Daryl Morey, props to James Harden and everybody in between for doing what they do, the way that they do it, because they have elevated themselves to a first-class organization. Now, whether or not they're the standard will depend on whether or not they win a championship or not. But they're clearly one of the elite organizations in the game of the NBA and in the world of sports. And Daryl Morey has everything to do with that. But James Harden has something to do with it too. Working in tandem, talent and executive, and making decisions together, understanding somebody has to lead the pack in making the decisions, and somebody has to lead the product on a court of play. Understanding what the relationship dynamic is key to success. This is what the New York Knicks have lacked. See, part of the problem with the New York Knicks picking a David Fizdale, and I'm not casting any aspersions on David Fizdale. David Fizdale can coach. I got faith in him. I'm happy for him, even though my first choice would have been Mark Jackson. My second choice would have been David Fizdale. Steve Mills and Scott Perry know what they're doing. My problem is the presence of James Dolan. James Dolan might console, he might talk or whatever the case may be, but James Dolan lives in his own world, like most billionaires. And he's not interested, no matter what he says or how many conversations he has. He's not really interested in doing anything other than what he wants to do. And my point is, it ain't about what you want, it's about what's best. The successful organizations think like that. The ones who aren't don't think like that. Which brings me to Irvin Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers. Because, ladies and gentlemen, things are getting very, very interesting in Los Angeles. Allow me to inform y'all. As you all know, the Los Angeles Lakers are expected to have enough cap room to get 2 max players. There has been rampant speculation. I shouldn't say rampant. Let me take that back. There has been speculation that's percolating and growing that not only are the Lakers going to get 2 stars, they could end up getting a third. That they can end up getting a third. I am not exaggerating. The belief is you go out there and you get a LeBron James with a Paul George, and then you trade for Kawhi Leonard, preferably Brandon Ingram and Julius Randle. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not going to happen. At least from what I'm told. What I've been told by a couple of reliable sources, first of all, you don't know what LeBron's going to do. Secondly, Philadelphia is an option. If not for LeBron, then for Paul George, it would be a perfect fit with what Philadelphia has. Because LeBron James, it's believed, could take a little something away from the development of Ben Simmons, while Paul George would only elevate it because it doesn't strip Ben Simmons of any of the responsibilities. Plus, you have a go-to guy to give the ball to who can score for you from the perimeter and beyond, even though Paul George's last game in Oklahoma City, when they lost to the Utah Jazz, scoring just 5 points, wouldn't be indicative of that. Paul George is still a star. So what do you have? You have a situation where Philadelphia is competition for the Los Angeles Lakers as it pertains to the services of not just LeBron James, but Paul George. And here's also what I have heard. The Lakers can't get all 3. I'm giving you a quote from an executive who will not be named that broke this down for me. He said if they get LeBron and Paul this year, Kawhi Leonard is out. People don't realize LeBron's max number will be around $36 million. And Paul's will be $30 million. In order to get both next year, the Lakers would have to renounce the rights to Isaiah Thomas plus another player. And any deal to get Kawhi with in all likelihood have to include Kyle Kuzma. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not giving up Kyle Kuzma. I'm not giving up Kyle Kuzma. Kyle Kuzma is not the player that Kawhi Leonard is. True. But Kyle Kuzma is somebody I believe that's going to be a star in this league. And if I'm getting a couple of stars to come here, I'm keeping Kyle Kuzma with them. You can have anybody else you want. You can have Brandon Ingram. You can have Lonzo Ball. You can have Julius Randle. You can have them. You can have some picks. I ain't giving up Kyle Kuzma. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I like Kuzma. He's not the player Kawhi Leonard is yet. I know that. But I'm not giving up Kuzma. I don't know about Kyle. I don't know about Kawhi's health, A. And B, I don't know about his temperament. Because Lord knows what the hell has happened with him in San Antonio. I'm not giving up Kyle Kuzma. Not unless I can't get anybody else. But if I could get LeBron and Paul George, I'm keeping Kyle Kuzma. I'm not trading for Kawhi. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I don't care what anybody says. I'm going to stand past. So this is going to be very, very interesting. Because you got to remember, if Magic Johnson doesn't spend money this year, he can wait until next year and go after somebody like Klay Thompson. Because even though Philadelphia, I think the 2 players Philadelphia should want most is Paul George or Klay Thompson. I think both of those guys are perfect fits for Philadelphia more so than even LeBron James. Not to say that they're a better fit than LeBron James, because I know better than that. I'm simply saying that's who Philadelphia should prefer. Because LeBron James alters everything because he's ball dominant. He's got the cachet and the box office appeal, and he can do whatever the hell he wants to do. And that may stunt the development of other players. Stephen A., is it blasphemous? Hell no, it ain't. I have gotten sick and tired of the things that are omitted about LeBron James. LeBron James is the greatest player in the world. LeBron James is number one. We all get that. But when are we going to ask ourselves this question? Does LeBron James elevate the players around him? Or does he take away from them? LeBron James doesn't go anywhere else and fit in. Not since that loss to Dallas in the finals. Wherever LeBron James goes, it calls for sacrifices to be made on the part of the other players. D. Wade had to sacrifice. Chris Bosh had to sacrifice. Kyrie Irving had to sacrifice. Kevin Love had to sacrifice. Because LeBron James, even though he can do it all, and he's the best, he's ball dominant too. Watch the games. You'll see for yourself. When we use the word sacrifices, I was arguing with Tracy McGrady today on First Take, my television show, which airs every weekday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern time on ESPN. When I was arguing with Tracy McGrady this morning, because he said, I'll take LeBron over Michael Jordan any day of the week in terms of building a team because of the unselfishness. I'm like, are you smoking something? Are you on crack? I mean, please. I don't want to hear that. Don't talk to me. Michael Jordan was a scorer machine. He was an assassin. He was a lot of different things. But don't talk to me about just selfishness. Michael Jordan gave ample opportunities to other guys to step up and handle their business. And they couldn't do it, so he'd do it. I personally know of games when Michael Jordan walked up to Phil Jackson and said, look, man, give the other guys a chance to do something today. I'm going to take the day off. I'll go out there. I'll score about 15 or 20 for you in the first quarter. Then after that, you can play them most of the time. And I understand that LeBron James goes out there and tries to get others involved and tries to do some things for them. But for the most part, because he's ball dominant as a point forward, his game is surreal and phenomenal as it is, also calls for sacrifice on the part of other players that Michael Jordan never called for, that Kobe never called for. We don't talk about that much, do we? No, we don't. So I'm saying to you that when you look at it from that standpoint, you better start asking yourself what you really want. What is really worth getting? And I'll tell you something else if you're Los Angeles, even more so than New York, that you have to worry about. See, LeBron won't come to New York to play with Kristaps Porzingis, even though he'll give David Fizdale an interview. I'd be shocked if he came to New York. But I'll tell you why New York is more attractive than L.A. You're playing with house money. There's no expectations. New York Knicks haven't won a championship since 1973. They've been to the finals twice since that time. We knew they weren't going to beat the Spurs in 1999. And in 94, John Starks with his 2 for 18 shooting self, 1 for 11 from three-point range. As much as I love John Starks, and we know how much I love Pat Riley, should have had Rolando Blackman up in there. That's why you acquired him from Dallas. Put him in the lineup. He wouldn't have shot 1 for 11. Pat Riley may have dropped the ball there. But I'll tell you this. If you came to New York, LeBron, you're playing with house money. Because who the hell expects anything? Anything you do for New York is going to be ultra appreciated. Because who the hell is counting on anything from New York? Now, I've been told that LeBron will never come to New York as long as James Dolan is the owner. I'm not disrespecting James Dolan. I'm telling you what I heard. But he's playing with house money if he comes to New York. Here's the problem with coming to L.A. Tell me a champion, tell me a marquee superstar player that has worn the purple and gold representing Laker Nation that hasn't won a championship. We can start with Kobe. We could throw Shaq into the equation. We could throw Magic and Kareem and Worthy into the equation. We could throw Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West into the equation. We could do that. We could definitely do that. But here's the reality of the situation. If we're really, really being honest with ourselves, okay? Here are the facts. The one star who didn't win the championship. The one superstar who did not win a championship wearing a Los Angeles Lakers uniform was Elgin Baylor. That's the bottom line. I'm giving you truth here. I'm giving you facts. See, we don't want to say this stuff like this because we don't want to get down to the nitty-gritty of it all. But it's the absolute positive truth. When we look at guys who have lost the NBA Finals, Jerry West is 1-8 in 9 NBA Finals appearances. The only other person who's lost more championships than LeBron James is some dude named Larry Faust, who played in the 50s and early 60s, and the great Elgin Baylor, who is 0-8 in NBA Finals. 0-8. Lost all 8 times he has been in the NBA Finals. All 8 times. So to me, LeBron ain't gonna want to go to LA because since the 70s, which is nearly 50 years ago, every major star who has played in a Lakers uniform has a championship banner to validate them. Which means if LeBron went to the Lakers, that would be the expectation. And with the Warriors in the West, with the Rockets in the West, I don't think LeBron wants that. Which is why he'd probably stay East. Now that is, of course, unless Houston loses. Because if Houston lost in the NBA Finals, all right, what about Houston? Now I've been told, as I said to Daryl Morey, alluded to with my interview with him in hour number 1 of this show, I've been told Houston has no intentions of pursuing LeBron James. That their priority is going to be to keep this team intact. Their priority is going to be to take care of CP3 because they expect to win. Now, obviously, I think if they lose, they'll have to modify some things. And I don't think Chris Paul is somebody that's going to get screwed over. They love Chris Paul here. He loves them. And I don't think there's any way in hell that he walked away from $200 million with the Clippers just to take a $30 million or so in Houston. I think he knows he's got a big payday coming down the pike. And to be quite honest with you, he will have earned it. Do I give LeBron a chance to end up in Houston? Absolutely. If they lose. If they win, they may make the decision. They don't need him. Either way you slice it, here's my point. If you're Irvin Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers, you got a roadblock. You got a roadblock with LeBron because he may not want the pressure of being in the purple and gold in L.A. with those expectations. Because make no mistake, it would be championship expectations. And he don't want to come to Kobe's house. Because it is Kobe's house. But it's going to be up to Magic Johnson to change his mind. Especially if you can't get somebody but Paul George, and even that's a question mark. Either way you slice it, it's getting very, very, very interesting. It's getting very interesting. My man Champ that always calls into the show. I usually don't read his text while I'm on the air. I wait until I go to commercial, but he just texted me. He said, be careful. Some goofy LeBron fan will call you a liar because Gary Payton and Karl Malone didn't win. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not talking about people past their primes. that were damn near senior citizens when they were wearing the Lakers uniform. We're talking about dudes who were in their prime as stars in this league wearing the purple and gold. And if we're calling LeBron James the best in the world, then this would be a time where those expectations would be valid. Things are getting very interesting in LA. Things are getting very interesting in the NBA overall. Knicks are in the mix. Lakers are in the mix. Houston's in the mix. Philly's in the mix. And Boston has the cachet and the material to disrupt it all. And there's still conference finals to talk about.
Washing my nose, oh yeah.
I'm a shower curtain, and I do one thing. Keep water from leaking everywhere. So you see why I feel useless compared to Geico, who does so much more. Like, not only could Geico save you money, but they've been around for over 75 years. And they give you 24/7 access online, over the phone, or on the Geico app. And they've got a 97% customer satisfaction rating. They do all this while I have to listen to this chucklehead. Oh, good, he stopped.
Washing my toes.
Oh, great, an encore.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
A couple of things. Somebody was getting on me because Steph Curry's always injured, blah, 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 blah. This is the third straight year, blah, 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 blah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as much as that may turn folks off, facts are facts. The sprained left MCL is a legit injury. We saw it happen. He clearly wasn't faking it. He missed 38 days. Tweaked his right ankle before that twice this season, a week apart in March. Sprained his right ankle 2 months before that. And a month before that, he sprained his right ankle and had a right hand contusion. Steph Curry is not a big, muscle-bound dude. He's relatively frail compared to a lot of NBA guys. It's just the truth. I think that had a lot to do with LeBron coming back from that 3-1 deficit, but not as much as the stimulus package handed to the Cavs by Commissioner Adam Silver in the NBA office, Kiki Vandeweghe and those guys, when they elected to suspend Draymond Green for Game 5, knowing Golden State had gone up 3-1 and were going back to the Oracle a couple of years ago. And remember the game that Draymond got suspended, Andrew Bogut got hurt, Andre Iguodala got hurt. As far as I'm concerned, it could easily be surmised that the Warriors would be 3-time champions right now. But that's neither here nor there. Also, in terms of what I was pointing about earlier in regards to the Lakers, let me tell y'all something. Y'all got to look at the Lakers' history, man. I mean, do y'all realize that we got Elgin Baylor losing all 8 of his NBA Finals appearances. Jerry West only winning 1 of 9 appearances. LeBron James 3-5. Okay? Will Chamberlain 2-4. Danny Ainge 2-4. All right? Magic Johnson 5-4. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar 6-4. Magic Johnson and Kareem played in 8 NBA Finals together. Kareem went 10 times. Magic went 9 times. That means Kareem went 2 times without Magic. And Magic went 1 time without Kareem. But did y'all notice that LeBron James, Danny Ainge, all right, James Jones, who's LeBron's sidekick, you know, and this kid, Max Zaslavsky, who played in the late 40s and early 50s. They are the only players on this list to have not played for the Lakers. I just don't think LeBron wants to go to the Lakers and deal with that. But then again, maybe what the hell do I know? He might not care. Michael in Queens, you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
How's it going, Stephen A?
I'm all right. Speak up, bro.
I love
Speak up.
Sorry, man. I love all your angles on everything, but real quick, with Steph Curry not being like 100% to the naked eye, how do you feel about him coming off the bench?
Well, I don't think he'll want to come off the bench, A. And B, you know, for me, I'm all for whatever gets his rhythm going, me personally, because he did come off the bench for that game against the Pelicans, hit his first shot, was balling that night, dropped 28 in his first game back after a 38-day absence. All of that is true, but this Rockets team is a different beast, man. It's a different beast, and I'm not sure that would help him. I'm not sure.
All right. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you. Let's go to Chris in Manhattan. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Thanks for taking my call. I thought you were brilliant on First Take, especially one in how you attack, and I don't care whether Steph Curry is 100, even if he's 100%, the way you attack Steph Curry is not allowing him to rest on defense. Thank you for telling them. I don't even think they know what you gave them on First Take today. In the off, even if you got James Harden on the opposite side dancing, I want somebody setting a back screen, somebody doing something that's going to take energy off of Steph Curry, that's going to take energy off those legs, which means on the offensive side, some of those shots that usually go in are now going to be short. But in attacking Steph Curry, did Cleveland with Kyrie used to do the same thing, put him in on-the-ball pick and rolls? I'm not so much sure about the off action. And then another point that you made about Chris Paul. And Chris Paul has been doing it since there was a debate about him and Deron Williams being the best point guard. I think we know how that went down. Chris Paul is, to me, like Ric Flair. He's the dirtiest player in the game, okay? He's like Isaiah Thomas, who, to me, was the original babyface assassin. I think Steph Curry is a babyface assassin. He looks nice, but he's the assassin in shooting you down. You were right. Chris Paul will do anything. Now, can you imagine this? Imagine what Chris Paul would do if he gets in the finals.
Well, if he gets in the finals, I mean, this is the finals. They didn't tell you? I will say this to you, though. Talent-wise, Chris Paul has an edge. Toughness, let's say, for example, he went up against Boston, Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart, that's a different animal. Let's just put it to you this way. Marcus Smart and Terry Rozier, they're a different kind of beast. They're not guys who get intimidated at all. One day y'all will figure out why that is. But these dudes are pure, unadulterated Rough Riders. They don't give a damn about anything. Basketball is a game. Life presents far more challenges to them than anything a basketball game could do. They would not be intimidated. I'm talking physically now. Physically, Chris. And what I would tell you to get to your original point, no matter what Kyrie Irving did to Steph Curry, that was in terms of one-on-one and just balling. I have never seen Steph Curry on his backside like I saw him last night. They putting wood on him, man. They putting a body on him at every turn. And I just wonder how much of that he can take. I really, really do. He's a guy, as great as Steph Curry is, he's got to get in the weight room in the offseason. He's got to get in the weight room in the offseason, Chris.
Yeah, but the other thing is...
Last word real quick. Go ahead.
Isn't he their weakest link on defense regardless?
Yes. Defensively.
Okay,
defensively.
Yes,
Defensively,
yes. That's why you have to attack him
but listen to what I'm saying. There's a difference between somebody attacking you defensively, because defensively you may like Golden State attacks James Harden defensively because James Harden can get abused from time to time on the defensive side of the ball. But physically, he's not frail. And so as a result, he's able to absorb a level of punishment and it not affect his game. For the first time, we may be seeing that happen to Steph Curry because of an opponent's physicality against him and the fact that his knee is tweaked. That's all I'm saying. But I appreciate the call. Thanks a lot so much. Your calls and more on these NBA conference finals and on anything you heard Daryl Morey and Coach Jeff Van Gundy say. You're listening live to Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it.
Back to the calls we go at 888-SAY-ESPN. Let's go to Mel in Queens. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, Mel.
Yo, what's going on? I've been listening to you. I watched you on First Take this morning. And for some reason, man, you are so biased when it comes to LeBron James and Michael Jordan comparisons, man. It's not even funny, man. Like a lot of your arguments that you use to say like Michael Jordan is better than LeBron could be shredded. But I got a joke, Stephen. No, it's just a joke. But when people start making those accurate arguments, you start yelling. I call you Screaming A. Smith sometimes. Because at the end of the day, you can't sit here and say Jordan never you say Jordan sacrificed, but LeBron never sacrificed. Jordan was a scorer by nature. Jordan shot. He's fourth all time in scoring. Jordan ain't sacrificed for the Bulls. Scottie Pippen sacrificed. Other players sacrificed for the Bulls.
Scottie Pippen sacrificed for the Bulls?
Yup.
Goodbye. Have a nice day. Scottie Pippen sacrificed for the Bulls. The same Scottie Pippen that didn't want to go into a game because Tony Kukoc got called for the last shot. Same Scottie Pippen that had a migraine headache in Game 7. I don't have time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm running out of time. Sorry, Mel. I don't have time for you today. Jeff in Omaha, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Hey, Stephen A. Love the show, man.
Go ahead.
Quick question. Been watching basketball a long time. I grew up with Samad Rashad and Inside Stuff my Saturday mornings. So I just want to know, when did the notion become that making it to the finals and losing is worse than just losing in the playoffs?
Well, it's not that reality exists in most instances. It's that in the case of LeBron James, the Warriors, the Houston Rockets, ultimately leading to a 6th NBA Finals loss on your resume because you know your team ain't good enough. It's not a crime to lose before the finals. You know, I mean, the bottom line is you get an extra couple of weeks off. After you've been to 7 straight NBA Finals, you might be interested in that if you know you're going to lose. It's possible.
Jordan I know he beat all 6 in the finals, but was he ever favored to not lose, to beat him, or he was always favored in those, right?
He was favored, but there was a couple of times that I don't think one time he was favored against the Spurs because D. Wade was hurt, if I remember correctly, and I'm certain he wasn't favored every time against the Golden State Warriors, so it's nothing new.
But Jordan, did he win all the playoff games that he wasn't favored to win, though?
Jordan won 6-0 in the NBA Finals. That's all we care about. That's all I care about. I don't care what y'all care about. That's all I care about when it comes to Michael Jordan. And I don't even know why y'all call me up to make these arguments. You're not changing my mind. That's how I feel about it, and that's just the way that it is. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Mel calls up. I talk about 1,000 things. Mel calls up about the same thing every time. That's why I hang up on him. Because when are you going to give it a rest? You going to stay on the air just to regurgitate your same comments? You're not. That doesn't work with me. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show. You know where I stand. I've given you ample opportunities, all right, to express yourself. You express yourself, I'm not buying it. And that is that. You have to accept it. Mel knows too much about basketball. You, Jeff, know too much about basketball to call me up here and make the same damn arguments. LeBron James lost 5 NBA Finals. Jordan never lost 1. Jordan, to me, is my GOAT. I'm not changing my mind. The sooner y'all get over it, you'll have an opportunity to express your profound basketball knowledge beyond Jordan and LeBron to my audience. Until then, you'll hear a dial tone. Talk to y'all in 22 hours. Until then, peace and love.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.